Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Dynamics Corner, the podcast where we dive deep into all things Microsoft Dynamics. Whether you're a seasoned expert or just starting your journey into the world of Dynamics 365, this is your place to gain insights, learn new tricks, and what it takes to create a fabric. I'm your co-host, Kris.
And this is Brad. This episode is recorded on August 26th, 2024. Kris. Fabric. Every time I hear fabric, I think of clothing.
What I'm wearing.
Yes. Or
how
sewing.
It connects together, it woves together.
See, this is where some of these names come from, I believe. And also, we had the opportunity to talk about jumping into the lake. With us today, we had the opportunity to speak with Bert.
Hello.
Good
afternoon. How are you doing?
Hi. Good afternoon. I'm fine. Thanks. Thanks for having me. How's your Brad and Kris?
Everything's going well over here. Kris and I were just talking about how we need to have like a pre-podcast pump-up song or something, because we sit and talk before the podcast, and before whomever we're speaking with joins, we need something to rally us up, to get us a little excited.
Yeah.
Especially the time difference, because like it's really early here. Wake me up here.
Yeah, indeed. Maybe the song "Eye of the Tiger." I always.
There you go.
Maybe we'll have to try that, Kris, later on to see. We're always excited, but I want to just have like an intro or something for us, just to I could picture like a football game or a sports game where people are in the locker room or the tunnel waiting to run out, pumping the music. Let's go. Or some sort of match. It would be good.
That does always thing right. If you play the right music, I'm also doing that with sports. With indoor cycling, then if the good music and quite a good beat,
Yeah, no, it's good. It even works with workouts. I noticed. I listen to some, techno music with upbeat music when I work out, because it gives me that energy and drive to go through. Sometimes it's a little difficult.
Do any of you do that when you're when you're focusing on work and you play music in the background, or at least through your headset, however you listen? Any of you both do that?
Yeah.
I do that often.
Yeah.
I do that often. I listen to music to kind of just keep me energized. To be honest with you, I listen to techno music, then sometimes country music for a certain point, but then also I found like classical music or symphony is good
when you're
for
focusing.
Indeed.
Yeah, it's good for focusing.
Indeed, that's very correct, Brett. When I'm also need to focus and concentrate on one thing, I play always some classical music with no voice, or just the classical.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's amazing how it works. It helps you really get into the zone and focus. Well, Bert, thank you for taking the time to speak with us this morning, this afternoon, this evening, whatever it is, wherever anyone is. And we've been looking forward to speaking with you. And before we jump into it, could you tell everyone who's listening, who doesn't know, a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, thanks for having me, Brad and Kris. I'm Bert Verbeek. I am 41 years old, married, have 3 children, living in a small city in the Netherlands, the same city as AJ Kaufman. I recently discovered the beginning of this year. We were in a conference in Denmark, and we said, maybe we can drive together. And where are you from? Barneveld. Oh, I'm exactly the same. So we didn't know that for a whole couple of years we are living in the same city. Never met each other there. And I'm working at 4PS as technical solution architect. They are working for 12 years, but 17 or 18 years working with Dynamics NEV and Business Central, and mostly focusing on technical part and also the function part of Business Central. That's
Okay. It's interesting. It's a small world.
It's really small world.
I come across individuals everywhere that have some sort of connection, and it's cases such as yours where you and AJ live in the same area. You said Netherlands.
Yeah.
Did you watch the race? Did you go to the race?
No, I don't go to the race because the price tickets were quite expensive. I watched only the starting, and that's maybe because last season it was perfectly because Max won and stuff like that, and now, yeah, it's a little bit getting annoying. Maybe that's the orange culture here. If you know matches don't winning, you don't watch.
I am so happy when Max doesn't win, and I'm happy to see that others are winning. It makes for a better race. I mean, it was a stretch of time there. Not to talk all about F1, but there was a stretch of time where even on the television, they were focusing on the middle of the pack because it was a better race, because Max was always so far ahead. At least yesterday we could talk about it, because by the time this is released, if someone doesn't know the results, then they probably won't be watching it. But just to see Norris finish so far ahead of Max just made me happy.
Yeah, indeed, but that was very crazy. It was I'm not sure 16 or 17 seconds before. It's just crazy how fast Norris was at the second half of the season.
I like it.
I can see indeed for other countries that there are some better competitions on it, and truly had the better for Formula One. But yeah, I'm a Dutch guy, so I was hating it.
No, I understand you have to have loyalty. Just as a side note, I did go to F1 Miami, where Norris won his first race and started this whole trend of Max losing, which I'm so happy.
Yeah, indeed.
It's like I said, it makes for a race. But to bring it back, one of the things that we were talking about, and that strikes us some interest, that I believe you also have some interest in, is this whole fabric type stuff.
Yeah.
This fabric type stuff, Kris, I'm not talking fabric like to make clothes. I'm talking about a different type of fabric. And even more so because I've seen some articles and I've seen some information that Dynamics 365 Business Central now can work with fabric. I don't know what it's making, but it can work with fabric. So if you would, Bert, if you could help shed some light on maybe what is fabric, what is MS Fabric, and then how does it fit with Business Central, and how does it fit in the Dynamics 365 ecosystem?
Yeah.
There's a lot there.
There's quite a lot, and indeed, I can know that people don't know Microsoft Fabric because it is quite a new product in this time. I thought in May last year, Microsoft has launched Fabric, and in November last year it went GA for it. And what you see mostly when you got a data warehouse, because Fabric is all about data warehousing and constructing and analyze your data. What the problem mostly is that the integrations are very complex. When you are starting to move from, for example, Bicentral or sales, or you have got another solution, you want to move that data to a data warehouse or a database. It is quite cumbersome and difficult, especially when you are upgrading your solutions, and one data is stored in one database for analytics and another one in another database. You want to combine it, and you have to move all the data. And there you can see that people are losing interest. Even right now you've got quite good examples of in Azure with a Data Factory and Synapse links and all that kind of stuff. And that's what Microsoft Fabric wants to cover all. Just a very easy to implement and to import data inside Microsoft Fabric. in it. That's in a few sentences from what Microsoft Fabric is. Just to have easily import your data in it, analyze it, and then show it to the world. In that case.
Oh, okay.
So is Microsoft Fabric in essence a different type of data warehouse or a data warehouse in Azure that is intended to have centralization of data or easier centralization of data? I hear of this Fabric, and I also see I enjoy the terms because I associate them with many things. Fabric, I always think of sewing and clothing. And then MS Fabric also has another thing. It's called like lakes and one lakes and data lakes. And I think of lakes as swimming lakes.
Yeah.
So maybe you could shed some light on the terminology of a data lake or a lake and how it relates to Fabric.
Well, what I always say, what you say is when you similar to a lake is how you can swim in it. In a lake, there are tons and millions of data in it. For example, you can swim in it, and it's quite large, and you don't know how large it is. And what Microsoft wants to cover is, and that's also the marketing function of Microsoft, is they call it one lake. Because first, before Fabric, you see that there are quite a couple of data lakes in it. Maybe you've got a data lake for your finance data, for your marketing data, or HR data. And in one lake, that is just all stored in one data lake. Underneath one lake, that there is Azure Data Lake, but it calls one lake. So you don't have, so if you're importing the data inside your one lake, and everybody can consume that data in there. So you don't have to export it anymore to another data lake. You can easily combine it just from one silo to another silo. So that's a perfect thing about the one lake in that. So what I said, you don't have to have separate data lakes anymore. You can just do it in one lake, and it's mostly similar to what you have in your OneDrive storage. OneDrive is all what you gather around. You put it in there, and everybody can use it. You can share it. You can use it on your own, stuff like that. And that's just the one lake for data warehousing in that case.
So I guess I'm trying to have a bigger grasp, because back in early days when you're on-prem, you just stand up a separate SQL database, and then you're just like, oh, let's just throw everything in there, pull everything in one SQL database, and then you create SSRS report or connect some other tools. So now that we're online, is this sort of a replacement, or is Fabric sort of a replacement of that concept back then?
Sort of. Because
okay.
What you see in the SQL database, it is all structured. It's all structured data, and inside your one lake, you can have unstructured data and structured data. In that case, you have got a lake house or a warehouse. So an unstructured data is just data that you put in there, and you really don't know what it is, what type of data is in there. It is all unstructured, and that you are going to convert from an unstructured data set to a structured data set. And there, a warehouse is more, the same, Kris, what you said is on an on-prem SQL server, where you then connect all your tools on it. So that's mostly basically a warehouse. And what you can easily do also with a warehouse, also with a lakehouse, that you can attach, not attach, sorry. You can see it like a SQL database. in the front end. So you can use your SQL commandlets and all that stuff you can use there. Also, you connect with the other parties that can read SQL. But in the backend, it is not stored in just tables, but is in a delta parquet format in it.
So with it being unstructured, I hear a lot of structured and unstructured data. So maybe we'll go all over the place. So with it being structured data, it's normalized in a sense of how we would think of like a customer table, where it's defined as you have these fields, elements, and records in here to come up with a customer. A data lake would be just data that anybody throws in there, as you're saying, because it's unstructured. But how would they get it in and get it out if it's not structured? Because is it unstructured in the sense that the application isn't holding the structure, but the user of the data is defining the structure of what they're putting in? Because if I had customer data in one system, could I put it in the data lake or the one lake and then retrieve that information out or combine it with customers of another system that may have a different structure? I'm trying to visualize structure and unstructured data and how we can associate or view it.
Yeah, mostly what you can say about, so sometimes it is quite difficult because when you are, for example, Business Central, how you've got a customer table, you importing that in your lakehouse, and then you say, okay, it is unstructured, even though that in Business Central it is structured because you've got rows and columns and stuff like that. But when you want to report something, you wanted a better structure on it. So like you've got some kind of dimensions on it. What's your open demands on it? What all that kinds of dimensions you can create on there, and that's how you combine also with other sources that you put in your warehouse where it is structured and where a user can immediately report on it in that case. So it's more like a structured data that the user can immediately build an Power BI report on it without any merging or remove columns and create dimensions on it.
This is interesting. How does that work with performance? See, I know SQL rather well, so I'm trying to, anyone else that may understand SQL or visualize SQL. So SQL, you have the rows and the columns as we had discussed within the tables. You can have multiple tables within a database. In large data sets, often there are indexes that have information and just a quick retrieval of the data with the columns that they include and the columns that they're sorted by, clustered and non-clustered indexes. If you have unstructured data, how does it work with performance when you have a large data set with this? Or is it just magic?
It's always magic now. It is stored not in a table. What you said with the columns and the rows and stuff like that, it is stored in an inside one lake in a delta parquet file. And a delta parquet file is just optimized for very fast reading for that performance. It is also and parquet file is also not based what I said on rows, but it is more based on columns. So you can very easily search, combine columns together, and read your data because if you combine multiple parquet files and merge it to a structured structured data set, that's also based on a parquet file. So it's all based on that particularly delta parquet format, and that's why it is reading that fast.
faster. Yeah.
So with that, it sounds like then so Fabric is more intended to be, as Kris had talked about, where you have information on SQL Server in early days, just trying to equate it where you copy the data to a data warehouse. So Fabric is meant to be a destination for a lot of data, not necessarily transactional. So the intention of, because you had mentioned that the files are meant for fast reading, so you wouldn't use it as a lake to store your data for your transaction, your day-to-day use. It would be where you would offload your data so that it could be read and queried upon. So that's, in essence, how it's used.
Yeah.
Oh, perfect.
Now with Fabric, I'm trying to trying to understand this fully, right? So when you're implementing Business Central online, and it kind of people always have that question. It's like, how do I report against it? How do I build a data warehouse? So should that be a natural path for organizations? They should always consider Fabric to do some reading of reports, or maybe utilizing Copilot, right? Now that you have this larger, more of a Fabric One Lake database. Could you call it database? Right? Can you still
Yeah,
database?
you can,
right?
I think yes, you could still it.
Okay, and utilizing all the Copilot tools, is that should that be a natural path for organizations when they get to Business Central Online?
No, I think, and that's what you see also in Business Central. You've got some very good reporting. With the analyst views, with currently also with the Excel reporting, and I'm really a fan of that one. And I think if you're quite a small company and you can use the Excel reporting, and there are also now some Power BI reports that consumes the APIs on it. That's enough for just a small customer or a small company, I think. If you want to for more complex data, combining data from Business Central with an HR system, or even if you're using Power Platform with Dataverse on it, and if you want to combine that data, I think then it's really interesting to go to Fabric in that case. So it's, if you have just reporting, and reporting is more, I think, about showing a list, or combining 2 or 3 tables together, and that's your overview. Then I think Business Central right now has the tools in it for it. But if you want to one step further, then I definitely want to recommend Microsoft Fabric in it. Yeah.
Yeah.
With Fabric and Business Central, now it's what we talked about with tools you had mentioned to make it easier to import data into the lake. See, I love calling it a lake. I always want to think of swimming and fishing, and that's how I look at it. There's a lot of data in the big lake. It's fish swimming around is the data. We have to drop our fishing pole in to pull out the data. What is built in, or what is set up with Business Central that allows for the easy importing of data within, or exporting, however, if it goes that way, into the data lake, or into Fabric, into a data lake, or one lake in Fabric? All these lake terms get me.
Indeed, that's sometimes confusing, all those terms. Indeed, but if currently the situation is that you can only consume data from Fabric, from Business Central into Fabric with the APIs. That's the official statement of Microsoft in it. And if you have quite a big database on it with a lot of tables, and with a high volume of data, then it can be quite slow, I think, because it will affect your NSTs, and mostly when I look at our customers, they said, okay, I want to have an 2-hour import from BizCentral into my fabric in my one lake in that case. And that's not quite an interesting storage, because we've got one customer that does it every each 2 hours with the APIs, and eventually they said, okay, we have quite an performance drop when it is running. We don't know what it was running, but in the telemetry we saw, okay, but you are using those APIs quite heavily, so just put them off, and the performance went very well. And that's also what I've 2 years ago, the Microsoft two guys of Microsoft has implemented BC2 ALS. That is BizCentral to Azure Data Lake. So they exporting data from BizCentral to Azure Data Lake and in deltas. So in that case, it doesn't have a full export, but only the deltas in it. And it was extremely fast for it. It just exported in CSV, and in this case, it was Azure Data Lake. It will combine it, and you can use it in Power BI. And that tool, I thought, okay, when Microsoft Fabric was arrived, why don't we use the One Lake APIs just to store BizCentral data into Microsoft Fabric? So in that case, now BC2 ALS is also can move data very fast from BizCentral to Fabric, in this case, inside your One Lake. So in that case, you can consume it. That's just, there's no source tool, but I definitely, and that's a temporary tool, but I'm just betting on another one, and that if that is official, then I will be crazy. It is mirroring a SQL database. So in that case, you can very easily in Microsoft Fabric say, okay, I want this Azure SQL Server with this database, with those tables, and it is directly mirrored inside my Fabric space. So with a couple of seconds, maybe 1 or 2 seconds, if you change your BizCentral data, it is there inside your Microsoft Fabric. So that will be fantastic.
That does sound fantastic, and it affords the opportunity to have some enhanced reporting without impacting Business Central, but you still have more or less real-time reporting. If the, as you had mentioned, I'm hooked on the analysis views. The analysis views with being able to pivot and export and even save those views is what we say sometimes a game changer. It gives users the ability to, once you have a list established, and even being able to create pages off of queries. But now you can take that information a bit broader. It cuts down on the needs to have a lot of these one-dimensional, I call them, reports, where it's always look at this information in this view. It lets the user of the application sort of control, as long as, again, it's important to understand the data, but they can control the information that they're looking at. As you were talking about this with the data going from Business Central into Fabric, it made me think of Dataverse. Where does Dataverse, or is that an outdated term now, fit in all of this?
No. The Dataverse is not an old term. It is part of the Power Platform solution. So if you're using Power Platform, Dataverse is the database of it. So that's the storage, and there are also some connectors from BizCentral to Dataverse of it. But Dataverse, what you said, is more for the Power Platform. And also, if you are finance and operations, it stores the data inside Dataverse, and also with dynamic sales and stuff like that. But Dataverse is not a warehouse solution, because it is quite expensive in that case. But you can also create some kind of shortcut to move your data from Dataverse inside Fabric. So in that case, what you can do, what you said, Brad, with your analyst views, it is just in one dimension view. That's really fantastic and really a game changer. I think also for especially the end users. But if you want, for example, if you have got a Power App and you've got your Biz Central and both are representing inside Fabric, you can really do quite a lot of analysis on that one. So in that case, it is really fantastic just to have your data from the Power Platform with combined with Biz Central, and yeah, that is really fantastic with your analysts on it.
So is Dataverse another unstructured database that's meant for transactional database, or is it? I don't mean to deviate from Fabric, but now you have my mind going on this.
No, it is
with the Eye of the Tiger song in my head.
Yeah, indeed. No, Dataverse is more. It is a structured database for it. So it's more, Kris, what you said is the old SQL database, but then in the cloud on that one. So there you can create your columns, your tables with a specific column type, and yeah, with the schema on it, and store your transactions in there.
So back to Fabric with Business Central, and hopefully, as you had mentioned, we'll get to the point where it could be mirrored in real time. You had mentioned that Dataverse isn't the solution for warehousing because it's expensive. I am one who doesn't follow pricing for a reason, because there's no way I could ever understand Microsoft licensing, and nor would I ever pretend to. I gave up on that. I focus on the technical and functional aspect of it. But how costly is Fabric? And then also with that, with Business Central, you can, have data retention policies to minimize the cost of the database within Business Central. Is it something where if you move the data over to Fabric, you can report on both? And if you move the data over to Fabric, and then you also, adjust your retention policies within Business Central to reduce the amount of data that you have within your database, what would be the cost difference for a solution like that? And then also, could you report off of both of them simultaneously? I guess you could, because if you had real-time mirroring into Data Lake or One Lake or Fabric, you could look at the data in one view.
Yeah, indeed, and I'm also not a licenses guy. I think indeed, if you are doing that, especially on the Microsoft, you'll got a full day job, and maybe more than that one, because there are a lot of exceptions, and it's really crazy on it. And
isn't it just a more general comment on the pricing? I thought Fabric it's like it's Azure, right? You just pay by the hour of use with a certain storage or something like that as well.
Yeah, you pay indeed for the storage and the SKUs. So in that case, Kris, that is indeed right. When you have got an SKU that represents a capacity unit, and if you multiply it by 24 and a couple of metrics, then you can get, for example, 170,000 seconds of consuming the thing. So in that case, when you are merging or combining reports, data on it, it is consuming seconds on it. So, and that's where the price is in that case. But what I always say, because I totally agree, Brad, the license guide is really great for Microsoft. There is a free app that you can install it. It's called like the Capacity Metrics app. It is from Microsoft, and then you can analyze how many seconds or capacity units something is using. So in that case, I always say just do a trial workspace of Fabric, and then analyze just 1 or 2 months how many seconds you need, and you can then buy it in that case. So then you really know. And the special thing I think is when you are mirroring an SQL database, an Azure SQL database, it is mirrored inside Microsoft Fabric, and that storage is free. And that's the beauty of it, I think, because what Microsoft said, and that's only because I'm Dutchman, and free it's always good. But Microsoft said, okay, you pay already on your Azure SQL storage, the capacity. You don't have to pay it also on your Fabric side. So in that case, yeah, it is
for the mirroring component.
Indeed,
right?
for the mirroring component, indeed,
yeah.
It's
Which is actually really cool. That
it's still all confusing to me.
it can be. It is.
Yeah, no, I understand. I mean, the way it's all charged in Azure by, in essence, use. It's a pay by use, but in my opinion, not to go around going down this road, but I wish there was an easier way to estimate use. It's tough. Yeah. Again, it's how much gas will I use, right? It's, in a vehicle, or how much electricity if you have an electric vehicle.
I think people need to consider when, to Bert, you mentioned, when do you use Fabric, versus just reporting directly from Business Central, is that, I always find there's a difference between reporting and business intelligence, right? So reporting is just like, just my result. I think where Fabric comes into play is if you have multiple data sources. Again, this is the same concept as what it was in SQL, where you just have different data is coming in and you want to put it in a, in a centralized data warehouse. And that's when business intelligence come in, by looking at other data that you're coming from anywhere from your organization, and then using, I think this is when Copilot comes into play. This is when your Power BI comes into play, where they can consume data out of it and be able to have much more of an intelligent reporting or intelligent analysis of your business. And this is where you get answers to questions that you didn't know you should be asking, versus, hey, yes, there is reporting in Business Central. Yes, there is, you can connect Power BI, but it's usually just more of a, on a very set data. So it is something to consider. Yes, it can get costly, but I think if you plan it out correctly, it brings a lot of value.
Yeah, indeed, and that's I think Kris spot on. It can be costly, but you also use the data just for decision making, and if you don't have that, I think that's also quite costly for your company. If you're doing the wrong decisions, creating the wrong decisions, and can bankrupt your company, that is quite a huge cost. But if you spend a couple of money on your data, doing the right analysis, okay, what's my trends and stuff like that, especially when you have got a lot of data in it, I think it can make you quite a lot of money in that case.
Those intangible costs sometimes are difficult for someone to appreciate, as you had mentioned. If it's you're not measuring the cost of not doing something because you're not doing it, and there's no way to say the efficiency, but you can measure the cost of doing something because it's going to cost you a price. With data, with Fabric and unstructured data, how does it work? A lot of individuals now talk about like AI, Copilot, prompting, getting information. Where does Fabric fit in that space, or does it fit in that space?
Yeah, it is really fits in that space, because you can also analyze the trends in it, and that's why Copilot, but more data science is coming into place. So in that case, there's also a part in Fabric, and I haven't got that quite well around and investigated. But with data science, that's the part that you can use AI to use to see the trends from quite a lot of data that is maybe unstructured in that case. And it's in that case, Copilot can also help you with because you can also program inside Fabric to create merges of tables and stuff like that. That's quite easy. Also, then doable with Copilot in that case. So in that case, indeed, Copilot can quite easy help you, and also with AI, the source. The source of all your data is just in your one lake. So it doesn't have to go around with multiple data sources. It's just there, and you can analyze with it.
So with the Copilot, see, this is all. I have so many questions, and my mind is going all over the place. I need some, Fabric and Copilot to structure the data. And like, I wish I could put my brain into a lake.
Yeah.
And all the information we consume to be able to bring the information out. I did just read a book called My Second Brain, which pretty much talked about that, how you can offload data into a place and quickly retrieve it.
And then use Copilot to summarize what you're thinking.
Well, there was a different strategy. The book was written before Copilot, but it was in essence of how to reduce stress and free up space in your brain by using a second brain and just more or less having a cataloging system that you knew how to use, so you could find the data fast, almost like your own Copilot, I guess you could say. But I guess now that you say that, Chris,
that would be amazing.
If you could have Copilot go against it.
You could. I mean, technically, right? I mean, if you drop everything about you.
Yeah, but then you're quite busy with all the writing and stuff like that. But it
yeah. Well, if you do it incrementally, little pieces over time, I mean, it's you try to fill up the library all at once. But if you start cataloging stuff from a point in time going forward, it could be good.
Sorry, really quick on that Fabric and Copilot. This is where I don't quite understand, and maybe I don't know the answer, and maybe for anyone listening to us, maybe can provide a little bit more, or at least maybe because I don't use it enough, is where Copilot comes into place with your data sets, right? And we've been hearing that Copilot is really meant to be conversational. It's not meant for analyzing numbers or you know what I'm saying? It's not meant to do that. It's more of a conversation. It's a natural language. So I'm curious how people use it out there. When they're using Fabric, Fabric can be used for data warehousing. People use it for data science, Power BI. So it's all about these numbers and crunching numbers. But then on the other hand, Copilot's not really designed for that yet. So how do end up people using Copilot when it's just a bunch of numbers in a data warehouse? This is where I'm.
Yeah, maybe that's indeed a little bit confusing, but there is also a Copilot inside Fabric, but that's more what we also using in Bicentral and in Visually Code. How can I write a good a Spark language or a Python language just to create?
Oh, I see what you're saying.
And then you have got the data science, and in that case, you have to create your own model, or you can use another model, but that's not text-based indeed.
Okay, that makes sense. So you're using Copilot to build tools, or how to, I guess, extract data.
Yeah, transform data.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay.
Indeed.
That makes sense now.
And then with data science, you have to, you can use models that are already out there you can create your own model and enrich it with your data and train it in that case.
Got it. So they use Copilot to say, hey, I need you to build Python library for it, or even R language if people still use that. But okay, that makes a whole lot of sense. So you just answered my question. Is like, where does Copilot come into play? So that makes sense. It's just used for how to build your tool.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, indeed.
That makes a whole lot of sense. Okay.
So then the other point of Copilot or AI, and I think we spoke about this briefly, is now we're talking about fabric and data science and lakes. Prompting. What are what's your take or what's your thoughts on how someone can efficiently prompt AI? I see AI. I mean, AI is just such a broad term.
Yeah.
I mean, AI encompasses many things, but so maybe if you use, the Copilot for Business Central or Copilot in a sense of even within your M365 tenant, what is the strategy for prompting to get the proper information out? My mind just really, to be honest with you, after a few episodes ago when we had the great conversation about AI, and I finally understood vectors and how it all works. So, now I'm thinking, okay, now that all that information's in there, how do we get that out? I can see, relationally how it all sits.
Yeah, I think prompting, if you create very good prompts, then you can really have the good results. But mostly prompting, that is very important, and I'm always also struggling with it because I thought mostly a prompt must be very simple and small. But currently, what I'm seeing with prompting is they're quite huge on it. So what they always do is putting an example in it, or say on bullet points, okay, this is not what you can do on it. Just maybe 10 bullet points, and then say, okay, please don't do this or that, or use this standard and stuff like that. And what I do is always a lot of practicing on it, and that's quite hard.
So you write a detailed prompt,
yeah,
telling Copilot what not to return or what to not use. So you have a large. I've always done draw me a picture of a guy planting a garden in cartoon style with a black shirt.
Yeah.
Is what I would typically write or something. I mean, I use Copilot quite a bit now, even more so for getting information because sometimes I get a lot of emails, threads, and I can use Copilot to summarize the thread, and it works great. But now back in the context of how you mentioned it, do you have an example of how you would use it with a large prompt like that?
Well, what I did is probably the Central Performance Toolkit.
Yes.
And currently we have also the page scripting in that case.
Yes.
So what I did, and it is not perfect. I have to get it much better for the prompting, is to just record the page scripting tool, just to create a scenario. For example, I'm creating a customer, and then creating a sales order of that customer. So then you can export it in a readable format, and there I put Copilot on it and create an BCPT scenario of it. And there, what I did is creating quite large prompt from, if you are seeing this tag, just do this one, or using the test framework of it. and this is an example of it. An example that from VCPT scenario that I already created with a lot of AL statements on it and put it in the prompt in that case.
That I would love to see. That is at one point, just to see you going from the page scripting tool to use Copilot to create a BCPT scenario. That can save so much time.
No, indeed. That was
in the current version of the page scripting. I mean, I'm a fan of the page scripting tool. I mean, it helps with a lot of testing. I mean, I'm big on automated testing, and I write a lot of tests. And having the page scripting tool helps. Hopefully, one day I'll have to put it on my wish list that we can have some of that automated to create a library of tests there as well, along with like we have with the automated tests, have some sort of runner. But that is, you need to write about that if you haven't written about that yet, with some examples or even a little video. That would be.
Yeah, I've presented before the summer on an conference, and indeed I had that's true. I need to write something on it, but I need to perfect it. But indeed it is quite a lot of time to take a BCPT scenario, and what I said is I love also the page scripting, and if it's automating, especially for customers with some customizations on it, it is really perfect. But and I think those examples are quite good for Copilot on that case. Just to have some clear statements on it. The BCPT scenarios are quite the same with the same syntaxes and stuff like that, and structure is the same. So I think those scenarios are quite good. Sometimes for me it's also quite hard to create scenarios inside Business Central for using Copilot on it, because it's always text based.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's almost. I think it's really more. I think it's more important now to understand the prompt structure. And there's plenty of online classes that you could take to do what they call prompt engineering now. So, as soon as you get the basic concept, like you could do a lot of stuff with ChatGPT or Copilot where you structure like, hey, you set a scenario, and when you respond, you have to respond in a certain way, and so your prompt can get pretty big, but you get a much better result than rather being too creative where like, oh, I'm going to interpret based on what you just said. So if I can't remember who someone had mentioned that you should take some prompt engineering classes just so you can have a good understanding of the structure.
Yeah, indeed. And I think probably the next job this year or next year will be prompt engineering. If you are doing that good, you can get a lot of money on it.
Yeah, you can do so much with it.
It'll be interesting to see where this all goes. It's the hype right now, but I wonder if it'll end up becoming commoditized over time as the dust settles, I guess you could say. It's Copilot will be more of a tool than a product, I guess. That's just always my thoughts. So it is quite a bit to it.
Totally agree. Yeah.
Well, Bert, thank you for taking the time to speak with us this evening. We do appreciate it, and you did share a lot of information and enlightened all of us on a little bit more about what MS Fabric is, how it can be used with Business Central, and what the hopes for the future with maybe if we can get some of that mirroring, and as well as the creative tools for AI prompting with the page script over to BCPT to create a scenario. I'll have to experiment with that, or maybe I'll catch up with you after. You can share one of your prompts of what you did so I can see how it did it.
I will share.
I have a quick question for you, Bert. Do you find, because you work with clients, and so do you find clients still confused with Fabric?
Yeah, they are still confused with Fabric, what it is. Indeed.
Okay. Yeah, because you're like, hey, I got the Business Central, and now you're asking me to go get Fabric, right? So I'm just curious from your perspective of how that looks like for you, because it is a challenge to educate. What will Fabric do for you? And usually I try to relay where like, hey, you remember data warehousing? Especially if you have an organization that has a lot of data coming from different places, it makes more sense to do that. And it's usually they understand it at that point of what it used to be and then what it's going to be in the future. So just out of curiosity, it sounds like it's still a challenge of customers not knowing what is Fabric.
Yeah, indeed, and that's.
And then you see One Lake. One Lake is another term being used.
There are a lot of terms on it, and that's always confusing on it, and especially when they're changing the names, then it's getting more confusing. And yeah, our customer, the bigger customers, okay, they understand it because they follow it and they have analytics on board. But with the smaller and medium customers, yeah, they really don't know what it is.
Yep. It is difficult to keep up. I mean, the rate of change with technology to me is progressing faster. And as you had mentioned, throwing the name changes, it's really difficult for someone to understand or appreciate the value of it, with everything in essence being relatively new, even if it's been there for a couple of years. Also, not knowing if it will be here tomorrow or not. If you look at a lot of these technologies that are tried, some of them last, some of them fade away, some of them morph into something completely different, I think, over time. Yeah. But it is, it's a good point, Kris, that the challenge of now I have Business Central and now I also need a Fabric, and Bert, your points of this, someone who's a small to medium-sized business may not even need it. They may have enough with their Business Central to not need it, to not even know about it, where a larger implementation will have the talent available to understand how it could benefit the business. I think it's a good point. It's a good approach, the way to look at it. Yeah. So if anyone wanted to reach out to you, Bert, and talk to you and maybe ask you any more questions or learn a bit more about Fabric or AL prompting, what's the best way to get in contact with you?
You can find me on LinkedIn, Bert Verbeek. Twitter, I'm also there. And I've got my own website, bertverbeek.nl, and there you can also find my contacts on it.
Excellent.
You
going to any conferences anytime soon?
I hope Directions EMEA, that I'm there in Vienna. I think that's for this year. I think.
Okay.
And probably you are going to Days of Knowledge, Atlanta.
Yeah, I won't be able to make it, unfortunately. It's overlapped, but I've heard. I mean, I think everyone should be able to check. You should be checking it out, especially from a technical aspect. Is answering questions like, "Hey, when do you use Fabric?" Right. So I know Brad will be there. So one of us is going to represent.
Yes, absolutely. I'll be at Days of Knowledge in Atlanta. We're coming up into the conference time. I know Kris had asked you about the conference. It is tough to choose which conference to go to. So there's a lot of conferences available. Yeah. So it's just a matter of finding the right conference that fits your target. And with Days of Knowledge, unfortunately, Kris and I won't be there, but I'll be there. Kris is also
He'll be
going
there. I will be at the Power Platform, which I think they'll be speaking about Fabric too and how they use that. So I'll be there. I'm excited about that.
And I won't be. So you'll be representing on that one there. And I'll be doing the other one. We're splitting those conferences up,
and then afterwards share the knowledge of it.
Absolutely.
We'll have to do a recap for Days of Knowledge.
Yeah, but also for Power Platform Summit.
Yes,
we should do both.
I think it's really interesting, both, because Days of Knowledge is also here in the Europe. And I'm presenting there, and I think it's a really good concept on it. Just very small,
much needed,
and you can speak to everyone. And I'm never went to the Power Platform conference, so
this is my first one, so we'll see.
It would be very interesting about your recap, Kris.
Yes. Kris, we have to. I won't say it, but maybe we could try to do something live. Or I don't know. We'll have to try to work that out. We tried that before, and it gets difficult with the internet connectivity at some of these conferences to do something live. But yeah, no, maybe we can experiment. Well, again, thank you, Bert. We do appreciate your time speaking with us this evening. It was extremely valuable, and any time that anyone spends with us, we appreciate because you don't get that time back. Thank you again. We look forward to talking with you soon.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Brad and Kris. Thanks a lot.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Ciao,
Okay,
ciao.
bye.
Thank you, Kris, for your time for another episode of In the Dynamics Corner Chair. And thank you to our guests for participating.
Thank you, Brad, for your time. It is a wonderful episode of Dynamics Corner Chair. I would also like to thank our guests for joining us. Thank you for all of our listeners tuning in as well. You can find Brad at developerlife.com. That is DVLPRLIFE.com. And you can interact with them via Twitter, DVLPRLIFE. You can also find me at matalino.io, MATALINO.io. And my Twitter handle is matalino16. And you can see those links down below in the show notes. Again, thank you, everyone. Thank you, and take care.